Good morning, and yes, I am very fortunate to have taken on a wonderful team here in the government of Nova Scotia, thanks to Natasha, who was the founding or the very first deputy minister of that department. I'm going to start first by a show of hands. So who here is from outside of Nova Scotia and visiting us today? Well done, Natasha and team, on bringing in such a great group. This is lovely to see. Welcome. We're really sorry about the rain. Everyone will say to you, it's a really nice place when the sun's out. Now for the rest of you, let me see the show of hands who were born here or chose Halifax like I did to be, Halifax and Nova Scotia, to be my home. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that. Let's chat about what it is like in Nova Scotia and the things that matter to us. Okay, AI. You heard yesterday, for those of you who were able to join, both the Minister and Deputy Minister for Technology and Innovation from Alberta talk about their approach, their innovative approach, and they're clearly the leaders in Canada. I'm very fortunate that the Deputy Minister and I created a sub-table on AI at our federal, provincial, territorial group focused on artificial intelligence. We work with every jurisdiction across the nation to try to find opportunities. How do we learn and how do we share? And we as a province have benefited greatly from their leadership in this area. And so we're really fortunate to learn. Sometimes we're fast followers and sometimes we're a little bit slower, and then there's hopefully some things that we're going to be the first ones to do as well that we can then share with the rest of the nation. I think another piece that's really important for you to know is we are working with all of the 4 provinces in Atlantic Canada on AI. As a province, we have 6 areas of investment and priority from an economic development standpoint. And AI and digital is one of those. And as a result, we've created tables across the 4 provinces focused on really driving economic growth and collaboration across all of these wonderful provinces that we are so close and share so many relationships with. And working together as the 4 provinces, we're really trying to figure out how we can best support the economic development opportunities for our small and medium-sized businesses, for our innovation community, and for anything beyond that as well. And so part of this is reinforcing the value and the priority that we have here as a province, and hopefully reinforcing to you that the things that you're really hoping for, we're acting upon as well. Now let's turn it inside. I think the other piece that's a really important point that came up yesterday as well is every single province across the nation currently has a deficit, which means we really need to think strategically about what we're doing with the dollars we have, the resources we have, and the priorities that we act upon. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about how we're approaching AI in government and the things that we're really thinking about. And what's really important to me is it doesn't matter whether you're a government entity. We're a large enterprise. We essentially are like any large business that has hundreds of employees who are focused on fixing old things, protecting old and new things, and building new things. And that's how we're looking at what we're doing around AI. And I think the part here for us is the real work is actually building the capacity and capability across government. So Natasha just said critical thinking. Critical thinking is really important here. This is the part that matters to us, is you can't automate a broken process. One of the pieces that is really important to us is having people stop and think critically, should we actually be doing this? So instead of just going and saying, here's a tool, go apply it and build things, we actually need to step back and challenge old assumptions around the way that we did things. We're really focused on red tape reduction around policy and regulations and permitting and other pieces here. And what we've found is the burden isn't the regulatory piece, it's the policy piece or the interpretation of it. And so when we get into the way that government operates, we have to really think strategically about what can we change. And that's hard, change management. That's hard in getting people to think a little bit differently. And us doing it in government is no different than if you were a large utility or telco or retailer. They're all the similar challenges. Now, a piece that's also important here too is that our investment has to create value. We can't just go and throw dollars at something just because it's a really neat idea. We're really focused on thinking about where our dollars go and where our time goes. That means what we're doing is really being deliberate about where we put our investment, and we really have to focus on not chasing hype. That means also we're focused on our internal folks too. We're thinking about where the capacity internally can come from and making sure that we really figure out where teams are. Everyone is starting from a different place. There are people who still struggle sometimes using the chat function in Teams because they're not on technology every day and it's not part of their day. And assuming that we can go and throw a tool at them and ask them to use it and to be adept is really challenging. So knowing that we have to support people on that spectrum. I'm sure everybody has some friends or an older friend or parent or relationship of someone who says, what's the AI thing? So we have to remember some people work in organizations that just don't get exposed to it, don't have the interest in it maybe personally or the aptitude. So we still have to support everyone on that journey too. I think this is a really important piece around governance, and it sounds really boring. But what begins as an experimentation is quickly going to move into infrastructure. And we have to be really careful about thinking about what this means. I can go and give you a tool that you build and the team relies on. But that now means that that becomes part of our existing process and system. So if we don't fully understand what that long-term operating model looks like for artificial intelligence, then that's a real risk. Anything that gets created is creating an operational and a financial obligation for the future. And so I'm very conscious of the fact that I can go and make a great agent and share it with folks on my team. We're big proponents of trying to understand Copilot in our environment. We are Microsoft users, so let's understand how that works. It's very easy for me to go and share an agent with my colleague who also has a Copilot Pro account. Right now that's free, but one day that might not be free to create that incremental agent. Or if I go and I'm using Copilot Studio and sharing agents with lots of people internally, I have a cost structure in my mind today, but the value that that creates, but I don't know a year from now what that actual cost structure looks like, which means I really have to stop and think, is it worth automating? Sometimes there's an assumption that technology makes things cheaper and faster, when sometimes legacy and old ways of doing it is actually a lot easier and cheaper and more reliable. So we have to be really logical about what we're creating sometimes too. I think people in Alberta are like, oh my God, I can't believe she just said that. But it's true sometimes for some of the things that we have, at least. So I think we're really intentional about what governance means. And then I think there's another piece on the governance side. And maybe not everyone thinks this way, but there's a lot of questions that the general public has around, well, what are you as government using around AI? Well, that creates two problems. I am notorious for terrible spelling and texting errors. I think there's some people I know in the audience that have definitely received some of my convoluted messages and are like, what is she saying? I love a good Copilot or other AI tool where I do speech to text, it summarizes things, it looks good, there's no spelling error, and off I go. Now, is that defined as something that I've used artificial intelligence for? And so then we have a definition where, how do you determine as a public person asking what is government using AI for? What's your threshold for what we actually are using AI for? And then the second piece is around the actual governance of it. If you want to know what we're using AI for and you ask, that means we actually need to have a list. And so there's a piece here too of us being very intelligent about ensuring that when someone creates something that has some future dependency on others, that we actually have a record of it. We know who made it, and we know that if they leave the organization, it's not going to fall flat. I can create some incredible agents that build out great systems, and if I walked away tomorrow and somebody didn't know how that ran, that's complicated. And so one of the pieces that I struggle with sometimes is shadow IT. I've been in different IT departments. This is always an ongoing challenge. You want to ensure you don't have shadow IT where other departments buy things, because maybe you couldn't do a security check on it, you don't know how it's paid, you don't have long-term support. Well, we've gone to a world of we don't love a lot of shadow IT that it presents risk, especially in government, to now I'm going to let you go and create a bunch of tools on your own that could potentially become the future shadow IT because we didn't have some reasonable governance around it. And so the risk aversion we have is a little bit stronger for ensuring that we at least have some level of control for some of our governance. I think the next piece too that's really important for everyone to think about is that leadership sets the tone. And if leaders don't learn, an organization's never going to adapt. If you're not asking people questions and if you're not using the tools, it's really hard for your team, who might be a little reluctant, to go and try. And so one of the pieces that we've really prioritized and focused on is the leaders of departments understanding how the tools work and then seeing how they function and where the potential value add comes from. there's a disconnect. Even any kind of AI solution, let's say I was building a machine learning model that was identifying an object in images, and I worked in a company, let's say I was sorting blueberries. If I sorted blueberries all day and I had images of those, I would know you could pull out the bad ones really easily. But on the strategy side, if I owned that company, I might not know that I have the ability to sort blueberries easier in a better way by taking data and creating a solution to identify it. This is where we are with the vast majority of challenges. We have strategic leaders who oversee things, and we have people who are working. And the disconnect between the two is challenging. So we need our strategic leaders to see where there's opportunity, to ask questions, and then also train the rest of the people who work with them, who are going to make those changes. But going back to thinking critically, we need to have that connection to be asking, is there a different way? Do we need these steps? Am I giving you permission to reevaluate? Now, this is the last piece that I want to spend a little bit of time on as I wrap up too. The part that really matters here is that technology changes faster than regulation. There's always these ongoing discussions around how should government participate and what's the role that they play. Now let's think back to things like smoking. There were social conventions and norms that happened before rules were made. We don't litter anymore on the side of the road. We recycle. We wear seatbelts. There's a bunch of pieces here that are really important. And I think it's incumbent upon us, as the leaders in this room, to stop and think about what happens with the norms that we have. So during one of the conversations yesterday, oh my goodness, I apologize, Dr. Cindy, and I can't remember her last name, one of the things that was talked about was people spending a lot of time on doom scrolling and the risk associated with what AI can enable. I'm not doubting that there's elements that AI has enabled us to probably do things that we question or created fear and uncertainty. But part of this, I think, too, is recognizing that as the leaders in this room, the role that we all play. We are the ones who need to speak and educate and converse and challenge. And Natasha talked about her son who's 17. My boys are 19 and 15. My fear is that they don't learn that an image they see is false. We can get to the point now where you fake every single thing. And the challenge that we have is getting people to think critically. And while for sure, government continues to understand the role that it plays, I think part of this goes back to being educated, informed, and open-minded, and thinking about the role that we have with everyone we meet, the conversations we have, the expectations we set as society to help fundamentally adjust what those roles look like and how AI will actually function. And if we can get to the point where we'll expect that it's not okay for someone to go and falsify images and then share them. Imagine as a society we decided and determined that social conventions don't allow us to do that. And so there is this piece where, yes, absolutely, we need to understand what rules there are. Are there times where we don't want AI to make decisions in elements of healthcare that requires a vast amount of human judgment? But we also know there's huge potential and opportunity of speeding up healthcare as well. And so we have to be really careful about where we think we place laws that either inhibit some kind of an innovation, that inhibit the development and progression of improved service delivery for citizens or for other types of services. But on the flip side, we have to be really careful too. There's lots of other pieces that we touch every day that really are important from a usage standpoint for us as citizens. So my ask to you is that we stop and think, we encourage others to question, to explore. You think of the older people in your life and the younger people in your life. And how can you help them also better understand what you would like to see as the future that we have for social norms with AI? So with that, I hope that you understand that as a government in Nova Scotia, we are investing in AI, both internally within the way that we do things with the people we work with, supporting the communities we have. We've recently stood up an AI team, and we have individuals who are working with us that came from our academic institutions locally. They have a knowledge base that's really important for us to reinvest and ensure that we have some understanding of how unique AI services can be built and delivered. And we're investing as well in AI tools that will help identify opportunities to reduce backlog, to improve service delivery, and engagement for employees. We fully recognize that most people are touching some kind of an AI solution every day. And so what we want to do is ensure that they have a tool internally that's safe for them to use too. We don't want them using things outside of a framework that's not safe for government data. But on the flip side, we need to make sure that they're happy and engaged, and they get a chance to experiment and try to do things that make their work product a little bit faster and better and more enjoyable too. And then we're going to continue to invest in our small and medium-sized businesses, the innovation communities that we support, and everything else that's going to make Nova Scotia stronger and better as well. So with that, I thank you, and if you have anything you want to chat about from an AI standpoint, feel free, please reach out. We'd love to chat and have conversations, and we look forward to continued dialogue around how we shape society and how AI gets used here. So thank you.